Hello and welcome to another episode of Rico'S Rants. I'm your host, Rico DiGiorgio. So it's been a while. I have to get through some videos that I've seen. So bear with me. I'm going to try and keep these short, detailed, as decently as possible, but I've seen a ton of movies and I have to talk about every single one of them. First on the list, going back to my previous video, which was Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, I gotta talk about Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. God, this actually was hard to get through. And I skipped ahead and I watched Episode 3 with a friend of mine. And even though we were drunk, it took a lot of effort to get through. We actually skipped a couple scenes. It was just like, oh, fuck, dude, this is just... Even though this is the best of the prequels, but look, I'll get to that for episode 3. Episode 2, I watched sober, and I suffered through it. Oh, God. This is easily the worst of the prequels, and a lot of people disagree. They say that episode 1's the worst. Sorry, Attack of the Clones is really the worst of probably the whole franchise. I mean, of the actual movies, not Christmas Special, not the Ewok movies. This one was fuck. Okay, a little bit of quick history. It's set 10 years after Phantom Menace. Anakin at this point is now he's got to be 19. He's 19, being raised as a Padawan learner to Obi-Wan Kenobi, who's now a Jedi Knight at this point. I mean, if you know the backstory of what the fuck they go through, Anakin goes through some trials and blah, 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 blah. They have some adventures of their own and, books and, extended universes and shit like that. But we don't know all that shit. We just assume that he's been trained and blah, blah, blah. So at this point, Queen Amidala, played by Natalie Portman, is now a senator. So I guess it's a downgrade at this point. I don't know the semantics of politics and royalty for Star Wars planets and shit like that, but whatever. She's now no longer a queen. Not that she was really a great queen to begin with, but anyways, she's now a senator, and someone has tried to take her out. That's how the movie starts. Is there's an assassination attempt. Eventually, we realize, and this is gonna be full of spoilers, not just through Attack of the Clones, but for the other films as well. If I happen to reference other shit, an attempt is made primarily through Jango Fett. Jango Fett is essentially the father of Boba Fett, but really he's just the original clone, and he is the template to the clones, the title characters, Attack of the Clones, as well as the eventual stormtroopers. It is his DNA because he's a bounty hunter and he's a what the fuck is he? He's a I don't remember. So, anyways, he is sort of a secondary villain to this, and he's sort of played like a Western cowboy type character. He's got this Mandalorian. That's what's called. He's got this Mandalorian armor like Boba Fett, except it's silver and blue instead of green and tan like Boba's. And anyways, I'm not obsessing over the minute details. Obi-Wan and Anakin have now been assigned to protect Amidala, or Padme as she's frequently referred to as. So, Anakin has been harboring a hardcore crush ever since he was a little boy for Padme. And they eventually fall in love, and he keeps look, on one hand, I have to give credit to Lucas being semi-realistic in the sense that you'd have to assume, because Anakin is sort of living a monk type lifestyle, and they're not allowed to fall in love, they're not allowed to marry, and all that shit, meaning the Jedi, that he wouldn't know how to talk to girls. So every single time he tries talking to Padme, it comes off really kind of creepy, really kind of just bad, like, he just doesn't know what the fuck he's saying. And plus, she's older than him. Like, if I remember correctly, in episode 1, he's 9. And she looks about 16. So, she'd be 7 years older than him. So, if he's 19, she'd be 26. So, she's in her mid-20s, and this kid's fucking just a 19-year-old oddball. He's a 19-year-old virgin. He's got a lot of rage, and he's got a lot of pent up, just sexual frustration. No wonder the Jedi's turn to the fucking dark side, right? They just need a fucking release. Feel the Force. Fucking use the Force, man. Use the Force. Jesus Christ. Anyways, and eventually, episode 3 is 3 years later. So he's only 22 when he became Darth Vader. And she's only 29. Anyways, so she's older than him. And she's a politician, and she was a queen, and she, has experiences that, he's sort of like a monk soldier type guy. He's more military based, and he's angry and everything. So they clash. So I can understand, realistically, he would have no game. I mean, he could protect her. But, she's like, it'd be like, I guess a soldier trying to hit on, like, a politician. I mean, yeah, it's really like, it's like a normal guy trying to hit on a celebrity sort of thing. And not to say he's not good looking. Hayden Christensen's very good looking. So, at least he's lucky in that aspect. And so they're protecting her. Another attempt is made on her life, and they sort of track down who is behind it, and which leaves Obi-Wan Kenobi to go to the planet Kamino, which is the map of it has been erased through the Jedi archives. They never actually explain who deleted it. And that was something that was meant to be explained in episode 3, but Lucas just never got around to it, and then they expanded it in, like, the books or something, and I never read it, so I don't know who I mean, I don't know, I always assumed it was Count Dooku under the guise of someone else. I mean, that's what I assumed. And Count Dooku is more or less the main antagonist of this film, and he's played by Christopher Lee. The wonderful and fantastic Christopher Lee. If you don't know him, he's that guy who's like the British rich deep voice. He's the guy who's not Ian McKellen in Lord of the Rings. He's Saruman. Saruman? I don't know. I was never a Rings fan. He was in Sleepy Hollow. He was in a lot of Tim Burton movies. He was Dracula in the Hammer horror films. I mean, he was Scaramanga in the Bond film, The Man with the Golden Gun. The villain with the third nipple. Anyways. And he is very much playing a Sith Lord who is very aristocratic. He's very well groomed. He doesn't look like the Sith that we have seen in the previous films. Meaning, he doesn't look like the Emperor, who is, wrinkled and pale and angry and that kind of shit. And he doesn't look like Darth Maul, who looks like the devil. He's got horns. He's got red and black tattooed face. And he doesn't look like Vader, who's just more machine than man. So this was like a guy to see like what a Jedi would look like normal, like a normal Jedi, like Obi-Wan or Qui-Gon or Luke becoming a Sith. It's very awesome, actually. He has like a cape, and he looks like he comes from money, and even his lightsaber has a curved hilt, so it looks almost like a weird type of like rapier kind of blade. And he fences with it more or less instead of actually like wow wow. It's just G G G, and so he looks aristocratic is the best, and even his name is Count. I mean, so that also is probably a pun to his previous role as Count Dracula. So, anyways, after Obi-Wan goes to Kamino, he finds out that there is a clone army being made from Jango, who the hitman, the bounty hunter, and he sort of tracked Jango and Boba there. And this clone army has been made for the Republic without the Republic even knowing it. And it was administered by Master Sifo Dyas, who's been dead. And again, like there's like little backstory to this whole thing. Like you don't know why this was happening. You don't. I mean, Lucas sort of just glossed over a big important plot. So he eventually gets onto the planet Geonosis, which is basically this giant Mars-looking planet with the Geonosians basically are giant termites. They're these giant termite insect-looking winged things. They've got their fucking master is I don't remember, but Count Dooku is sort of running that ship, and he's sort of running his own separatist army. He is taking the orders of Palpatine. So Palpatine, at this point, I mean, anyone who saw the original films and is now watching the prequels is like, Palpatine becomes the Emperor. We know this. It's the same actor. So it's really not a surprise. But it's interesting to see that he is orchestrating both sides. So no matter what, in his mind's eye, he's going to have an army. He's going to either have the clones for the Republic or the Separatists with the droids and even the Geonosians. Like, he's prepared no matter what. It's all about making him head of his own eventual galactic empire. So at this point, Obi-Wan gets captured. Anakin and Padme go to Tatooine briefly, and there, I will have to talk about this for my criticism, and there's plenty. But they go back to Anakin's old home, and they find out that his mother has been sold, because she was a slave, like Anakin was a slave, to the Lars family. Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, that's their family. Which, alright, I'm getting to it. He goes to the Lars family, finds out that his mother has been married by the man who eventually bought her, like set her free and then fell in love and they got married. And he even has a stepbrother, Owen. So, the Uncle Owen is really his step-uncle. Okay? So, he finds out that the Tusken Raiders, the Sand People, those fuckers, have kidnapped Shmi, Anakin's mom. So, in a blind fury and everything, he fucking tracks her down, tracks down the Sand People, sees her as she dies, and she like has a moment where she just, sees her son grown up, and then they tell each other they love each other, and then she dies. And Anakin, through bitter tears, rage starts to form. This is the first time we've really seen him get close to the dark side. And he slaughters all the Sand People, the men, the women, and the children. He just kills them all. And he goes back with his dead mother and buries her and reveals to Padme what he did. And you can see this look. And actually, this is one of the rare good scenes in this movie where Portman just stares at him. She's like, oh my God, this guy is a psychopath. But I kind of like him. Like, you see that, she's like, I think I'm falling for a fucking murderer. And it unnerves her. But clearly, it didn't matter. So, and I will give Hayden Christensen props, man. Like, he comes off very whiny. But that scene, it's a very good emotional scene, and he actually delivers it pretty well. A lot of people gave him flack because he's very stiff and wooden, and his voice is high pitched, and he kind of, Obi-Wan doesn't understand me. It's all his fault. Yeah, he comes off like that. But in that scene, he's emotional. His mother just died in front of him, and he's full of rage, and he's full of anguish, and he's full of loss. I mean, he went out there for the sole purpose to save his mother, and he couldn't. He lost his mother in his arms. So he actually delivers that scene pretty well. So, that being said, they eventually get a transcript that Obi-Wan's been captured. They fly to Geonosis. They try to rescue him. They get captured, and there's this Geonosian Coliseum type arena, like a Roman gladiator arena, and they're tied to posts, and for each one of them there is a animal or a giant creature beast thing that is gonna fucking kill them. And they're on, like, Count Dooku's watching, Jango Fett and Boba Fett are watching, the Geonosians are watching, the rest of the Separatists are watching, and just when you think everything's gonna go downhill, Mace Windu, Samuel motherfucking Jackson, shows up, whips out his purple lightsaber, and just says, "This party's over." Oh yeah. I mean, I can't like too many things about this movie, but Samuel Jackson actually was one of the coolest fucking things about this prequel trilogy, and that's just because he's awesome. They set the three free, and then a bunch of Jedi sort of just start fighting what they can, fighting all the Geonosians and the creatures as best they can. There's a little mini battle goes on, and then they're all cornered. It looks like they're all fucked. And then Yoda comes out of fucking nowhere with the clones. Doesn't explain how he got the clone army. There's no like contact, like, we need the clone armies. Yes, we do. Like, whatever. There's nothing like that. Just him in a gun cavalry ship just landing with a bunch of clones, and it overturns the whole thing. Anakin and Obi-Wan corner Dooku in a sort of hidden part of his castle when he's trying to fly away in his ship. They each battle him, and they each get fucked up. Anakin loses his arm, and Obi-Wan gets fucked up in the leg, and then just when you think they're about to be fucked again, Yoda comes out of nowhere again, and absolutely fucking fucks up Dooku, but really just like doesn't want to kill him. Just, it's sort of like you see him kind of training, like he's fighting him like he is going through another lesson with him, like this is his previous pupil, and he keeps talking like, "Much to learn, my young Padawan," like that bullshit. And it's ridiculous because on one hand, we've been waiting to see Yoda fight forever, but he's also fucking flipping and yelling and like bouncing off walls and shit. I mean, he looks like a frog, just boom, 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 boom. And it would actually make sense, but it's kind of ridiculous. Like, I remember watching this when I was 11 in theaters with my brothers. I looked at both of them and we just snorted laughter the entire fight scene, which, I mean, clearly Lucas was not aiming for that, but it was just ridiculous. I was 11. I was like, what the fuck? Then the movie ends with the wedding of Anakin and Padme. The only witnesses are C-3PO and R2-D2. Movie ends, that's it. Now, good things. That one scene with Anakin, that was a good scene. Um, there were some good fight scenes. Samuel motherfucking Jackson was great in it. But other than that, not a lot. And here's my criticism. Lucas cannot and should not write any more fucking dialogue. Ever again. The dialogue in this fucking movie was so cringy. Especially during the love scenes, and I say that love scenes like that, between Anakin and Amidala, where he's just like I said, like he's on one hand it makes sense that he just would not have any game and would not know what to fucking say. But he has this line because they share a kiss, and then later they're like sitting in a dark lit kind of room with a fireplace nearby, and he's like stroking her skin. He's like, I don't like sand or whatever. He says, I hate sand. It's so rough, it's coarse, and it gets everywhere. Because we meant to believe, like, okay, yeah, he grew up on Tatooine, which is a giant sand desert wasteland. And he's comparing it to her soft skin. And she looks at him and just sort of like bats her eyes, and they kiss, and then she's just like, I can't. And then later in that fireplace scene, he tells her, like, I'm haunted by the kiss you should never have given me. When I'm with you, I'm in agony. I'm dying. And she just, like, he's like, just, dude, shut the fuck up. Just shut the fuck up. Just, if you're going to come off desperate, at least be desperate. Don't fucking try and act poetic. Oh, God, all that was missing was him to have a fucking guitar and be like, oh, when I'm with you, I'm in agony. Like, just shut up. You become Darth Vader. What's this whiny bullshit? Fuck, man. Who else was cool? Actually, Tamara Morrison as Jango Fett was actually pretty cool. Like, I've sort of grown to love his voice. I think he should come back in a later sequel as Boba Fett. He'd be the perfect age for a grown-up Boba Fett. And he would be a clone. He'd be the exact same guy. Now, I've heard all these rumors about, like, recasting Boba Fett. It's like, why? Why would you recast Boba Fett? The motherfucker's right there. Yeah, man, I just hated this movie when I first saw it in theaters, and I have always regarded it as the weakest one. I mean, and to be fair, it's like, you would think it would be, because it's number 2 of the trilogy, it'd be like an Empire. Well, no, it's not. Revenge of the Sith is the Empire of the prequels. The one comparison that this is the Empire type film is that you're just not happy at the end of it. I'll give you that. But with Revenge of the Sith, you're very happy because he's finally like, you see everything you want to see. You see Vader, born. You see Luke and Leia born. You see the Galactic Empire born. So, but I'll say that for another video. I have to get through the other ones that I have seen since this time. So, okay, what would I rate? What would I rate this one? I'll give it a 2. And that's really, and I'll give you one better. I'll give you 2.5. Because it's still Star Wars, and I still love Star Wars. But come on, man. Just that dialogue is hard to get through. There's also some very obviously racist aliens in this, where they're clearly Asian, and they sound Asian, and I just, you can be inspired by nationalities and race and shit, but to make it a fucking blatant, obvious ripoff. Oh, that's one more thing I have to talk about. Speaking of racist stereotypes, we gotta talk about Jar Jar for a little bit. So, is Jar Jar Binks in this movie? Yes, he is. And he fucking is underused gratefully. But that's in response to the first one. Now, there's this online rumor, very detailed. It kind of makes sense. You kind of don't want to believe it, but it makes perfect sense. And I said this in the previous video. Jar Jar was possibly and probably supposed to be the original Phantom Menace, meaning he was supposed to be a Sith Lord in secret, in a similar sense of like when we first see Yoda in Empire, he was a blubbering, crazy, laughing, jokey hermit. He was a buffoon, not unlike Jar Jar, who was fucking clumsy and, talking gibberish and very kid-like. And Lucas likes to mirror. You can see that with the prequels. You can see that with the originals. You can see that with The Force Awakens. They mirror, each trilogy and whatnot. So it would, in retrospect, make sense that Jar Jar would be, in this version, the evil Yoda. The starting up buffoon, then revealed to be a sinister Phantom Menace. I believe he was going to be revealed as the main villain of this film. But because the fans, myself included, hated Jar Jar Binks with a fucking passion, Lucas got scared, Lucas got nervous, Lucas got pissed off, whatever you want to call it, rewrote hastily and replaced him with Count Dooku. That's what I think. And then drastically, minimized Jar Jar. Although, he did, in a weird way, have his own form of revenge. Because throughout this film, there is still politics. Because the prequels are all about politics. It's less about the Star Wars and more about how the Galactic Empire was eventually formed. With the main, Anakin turned the dark side, all that shit, in the background. It really is a political trilogy. And to go with that, Jar Jar gives Palpatine, because Amidala leaves Jar Jar as her representative of Naboo while she's gone. So Jar Jar actually recommends that, what's the word? Emergency powers, political powers, be appointed to the Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. So, essentially, Jar Jar, the most hated character of Star Wars, basically gave the Emperor his power, his political power. He was already a senator, now he's a Supreme Chancellor because of Jar Jar. So in reality, he actually is the Phantom Menace. Was he a Sith Lord? And no, he didn't do it on purpose. Meaning, he didn't do it for nefarious reasons for the Emperor to rise. He thought he was doing the right thing. Turns out, Jar Jar, you suck. It's all your fucking fault, Jar Jar. God damn it. But I know that fucking George Lucas was like, oh yeah, fuck all you guys. Here, I'm going to make Jar Jar be responsible for all this shit. Now, what are you going to say about that? You have to include him now. Oh, well, the reason why Emperor Palpatine rose to power is because, Jar Jar, fuck. We have to acknowledge him. Oh, this was a plot hole that I discovered. So, in episode 1, C-3PO is created by Anakin when he's a small boy. Okay, I wish that wasn't the case. But it was Lucas being like, oh, well, how do I introduce C-3PO into these films? He's got to show up somewhere. Okay, fine. The fact that Darth Vader created C-3PO, I can handle that. I did when I was a kid. I handled it. I'm like, that's kind of weird, but okay. Fine. So, when Anakin and Padme go to the Lars family house, you see C-3PO. Now with the gold exoskeleton that we will eventually see, and without without a red arm, which I think is still stupid, but he's shiny and silver. It's a prototype, another prototype C-3PO. So he's working for the Lars family. He's like sweeping, which is stupid. He's sweeping in the desert. Okay, I think he was sweeping. I can't remember. And they immediately recognize each other. He's like, the Maker! Like, okay. So, assumingly Shmi would still have C-3PO, eventually the Lars family would, in fact, have C-3PO. Okay, that's fine. So why is it that in Episode 4, when R2-D2 and C-3PO land back on Tatooine, the fucking Lars family does not recognize C-3PO? Assumingly, Shmi, like, let's say that she and Klieg Lars, Owen's father, spent some years together because she was a slave, and then eventually they fell in love and got married. She was a member of the fucking family household. C-3PO is another servant. He's an animatronic, sure, or he's a artificial intelligence, but his name is C-3PO. He goes by 3PO. He is very distinguished. People. It's hard to forget him. How in the fuck do they not remember him 19 years later? Granted, it is 19 years later, but come on. His name is still the same. Yes, his memory was wiped, but there was no acknowledgement of, like, Owen being like, I think I know this droid. Nothing. And that was just laziness and Lucas just not thinking. And I had a problem with that. And I remember even being drunk watching this with my friend. I'm like, I think I discovered a plot hole. Why did they know C-3PO? Huh? That's my drunk impression of me, and I'm pretty sure it's pretty accurate. So, without further ado, I will give this 2.5 stars. Stop biting me, cat. Sorry. And I hope I never have to watch it again for at least another 10 years. On that note, love you all to death. May the Force be with you.